Souvenir programs here. Haven't said that in a while. There were 3 dates in April for this player that were significant in his MLB career. I missed them all. I was busy. And you know old Tommy boy here likes his historic dates so that I can say on this day. In my last show, I mentioned this pitcher's name but forgot to put his autograph in my setup. I'm slipping. By saying it's just an insignificant detail and no big deal would not be professional. I could say, well, look, he's getting his own show now. That's not justification. Even though he was going to get his own show eventually, I just hadn't started working on it yet. So why not now? It was on this day, April 30th, 1955. Is today really April 30th? No, but it could have been. I was busy. That's when Dave Hillman made his MLB debut as a Chicago Cub. A couple of weeks ago, I called him Dave, and not by his given name of Darius Dutton Hillman. Somehow the nickname Dave came out of that, but in 1956, he was nicknamed Mr. Automatic, winning 21 games for the LA Angels 1956 Pacific Coast League Championship team. My 8th show on a player from that 56 team. He pitched off and on in the major leagues between 1955 and 1962, a righty pitcher who played on 4 MLB teams, 3 full seasons with the Cubs, 57, 58, and 59, and 2 years as a reliever for the Boston Red Sox, then winding down his MLB career pitching for 2 teams. In 1962, the Cincinnati Reds, and the other team turns out later that Dave wishes he wasn't on because his contract was bought, and now a member of the soon-to-be infamous 1962 New York Mets. During his first 3 months with the 62 Mets, Dave Hillman was given just 1 start by their manager, New York baseball legend Casey Stengel. This might have to do with Dave's debut with the Mets on April 28th. Another significant date that I missed, but I was busy. It was on that day. In the top of the 6th, first batter Dave faced hit a home run. I guess you could chalk that up to being on the 62 Mets and not the pitch that he served up to Philly's Don Demeter. Although he did walk the next batter, he would get out of the inning, the only inning of the game. But those Mets were historic in the worst way possible by losing 120 games, an MLB record. In their inaugural season, they stunk, and yet they still built Shea. In Dave Hillman's words, it was a joke, the ball players they had assembled. It was all old players who were over the hill. There were 1 or 2 young pitchers that were good. Only recently, this underwhelming MLB record was surpassed. The Chicago White Sox would top the 62 Mets record by 1. It took 62 years for a team to stink as bad as those Mets, or as bad as pitcher Ewell Blackwell's lucky jersey that he wouldn't wash during his 15-game win streak back in 1947. So let's go. Back to 1945, when Dave just graduated from Dungannon High School, named after the Virginia town he was from. It's hillbilly country. In the 2020 government census, they counted 257 hillbillies. Go back 80 years, that's when this hillbilly teenager joined the Army Air Corps, giving Uncle Sam 21 months of service, and when he returned home, played semi-pro ball in the 8-team Lonesome Pine Baseball League that consists of cities from parts of Virginia and eastern Kentucky. The team he played for was located in Coburn, a coal town 1 county over from Dungannon. I don't know the names of the teams, only the 8 cities where they're located, which is too bad because I'd like to know the names of those teams. This is true hillbilly baseball, rugged and rough, made up of older men from the area who knew life was gonna be short, working every day in a coal mine. Baseball was the one thing besides food, drink, and the obvious that these coal miners had to look forward to. Dave said at these games even the women folk had a mouth on them, and some were just as boisterous as the men folk. Signed by the Chicago Cubs in 1949, Dave Hillman bounced between their affiliates for 10 seasons, first with the Rock Hill Chiefs, Class B in the Tri-State League, going 14-11, and was just as good for the Chiefs in 1951, leading the league in strikeouts and picked for the All-Star team. pitched in the high minors until 1955 when he was invited to Cubs spring training camp, making his MLB debut on April 30th with part of the season spent on their top affiliate, the LA Angels. Not invited to the 56 camp, which turned out okay because he was on the Angels' 1956 championship team, earning himself a ring, which he liked to show. He finished off the season named a PCL All-Star and would finally stick in the big leagues the following year. Mr. Automatic was listed at 5 feet 11, 168 pounds, and before he passed away, Dave Hillman was the oldest Cincinnati Reds player and oldest member of the 62 Mets. How old was he? I don't know. I should have looked that up. I can't now because I'm using my phone to film the show. Catch-22 situation, sir. After his baseball days were over, the rest of them were spent in Kingsport, Tennessee, also hillbilly country. Saying goes, you can't take the hillbilly out of the hills, but you can take the hills out of the hillbilly. My last show was on George Freeze from West Virginia, also hillbilly country, but don't call him that. Over there, they prefer the word mountaineers, which is kind of like saying OJ's not a killer, just clumsy with a knife. God, I blow my jokes. It never fails. Getting back to Dave Hillman, who only recently passed away at the age of, oh yeah, that's right, I don't know. Really need to look into that. Meanwhile, I'll distract you with some razzle-dazzle, talking about the first interleague trade without waivers in baseball history, as I do my sleight of hand and switch scenes. In other words, hit pause and swap items. It was on November 21st, 1959, when Chicago Cubs pitcher Dave Hillman and first baseman Jim Marshall were traded to the Boston Red Sox for their slugger, backup first baseman Dick Gernert. This was literally a big deal back in the 1950s when both MLB leagues were pretty much separate entities and had been for decades. Leagues required waivers if they wanted to make trades between each other. This was to stop a bad team from selling all its good players to contenders in the other league. Dave's transaction was the first unrestricted trade permitted by a change in both leagues' rules. Red Sox GM Bucky Harris liked the idea Dave could either start or relieve, but his Red Sox career almost ended before it began, his life as well, when on March 10th, 1960, at spring training camp in Scottsdale, Dave was hanging out with his new Red Sox teammate, utility player Marty Keough. The two were out on the town a little too late one night and were trying to make it back to the Safari Hotel before the team's 1 a.m. curfew. Marty was supposedly doing 70 in a 45, lost control of the car, and it flipped and rolled down the road, leaving a trail of car parts some 600 feet. How many times did the car roll over? Some say 5 times. Dave's obituary says 4. Regardless, that's a big, heavy 1950s car that rolled over 4 times before coming to a stop on its roof. Marty was thrown from the car, walking away with a bad back. Dave needed stitches in his head and hurt his arm and shoulder so bad they thought his career was done. But for some reason, Red Sox manager Billy Jurgis chose not to penalize the two players. During his career, Dave would experience quite a few injuries while playing or being filmed. Filmed, you say? Yep, filmed. His first injury in 1953 was a badly bruised finger that happened around the same time as the death of his mother. This news hit Dave very hard, affecting his whole summer. Though not a baseball injury, the passing of his mom must have taken its toll on him mentally, not always able to fully concentrate on a game while playing with a heavy heart. Some take longer than others to get past the initial stages of grieving and get to the point of remembrance. Continuing on with Dave Hillman's list of injuries and mishaps, some probably could have been avoided if he had just spoken up. Like on the third day of Cubs' 1955 spring training camp, a motion picture crew came out to film the different camps and asked Dave to throw some pictures for the Cub reels. He obliged, and by the time they finished with Dave, his arm was finished too, ruining his entire MLB rookie season. He should have told the film crew that that's enough throws, my arm is tired. Dave also could have spoken up and told Marty Keough that he's driving too fast and to slow down, god dang it. Both responses would have been justified, But like most young red-blooded Americans, Dave probably didn't want to appear weak or look like a sissy. We've all been there, done that, completely understandable. But there is what they call common sense in doing the right thing so you don't ruin your career or die unnecessarily in a car wreck. Some learn this early in life, others learn later, some never learn. Dave had the same arm soreness in the spring of 1956, just not as bad, lucky for him. It was in 1957 when Gil Hodges hit a line drive off Dave's hand, forcing him to miss starts. Then there was his 1960 car wreck with Marty Keough, and that same year at Fenway Park on the 4th of July, while attempting to bunt, Orioles Hoyt Wilhelm threw one of his knuckleballs, hitting Dave's throwing hand, ripping off a fingernail. Season over. In 1961, Bill Bruton hit a comebacker, breaking Dave's thumb again, another season-ending injury. And his curveball was never the same. Dave said, "I spent all my life in baseball, and naturally I hate to give it up. I just decided that now is the time for me to start thinking of something other than baseball." Every off-season, Dave would work at his uncle's clothing store in Kingsport, Tennessee, and that was his next career after he hung him up at the age of 34, closing the baseball chapter of his life. Dave and his wife, Imogene, were married in 1947. They had 2 kids and were together until she passed in 2011. When he pitched on that 1956 LA Angels championship team, he was called Mr. Automatic, going 21-7, starting 29 games, completing 15 of them with 3 shutouts. Dave's overall minor league pitching record was 81-61. The nickname Mr. Automatic was used only in the minors, while in the majors, they just called him Dave. And Dave had an MLB record of 21-37 in his 64 starts with 8 complete games pitched. Talk about games pitched. When it comes to memorable MLB games for Dave Hillman, there was a game in May of 1959 when the Cubs were visiting Pittsburgh's Forbes Field, and Dave threw his one and only big league shutout against Harvey Haddix and the Pirates. He allowed only 2 hits. And those 2 hits, they didn't come off the bat of Dick Groat, Ted Kluszewski, or either of the Bills, Mazeroski or Verdon. Not even Roberto Clemente got a hit, and had 4 chances that day. That was Dave Hillman's best game while in the majors in 1959, his best in the big show. Lately, I've been into tracking pitchers' complete games thrown, and in 1959 with the Cubs, Dave threw 4. Complete games was already becoming a thing of the past in the 1990s. Now it's rare because now, as they say, throw 5 and fly. There's a book called The Bilko Athletic Club about Steve Bilko and the 1956 Angels, a team considered by many the best in minor league history. Mr. Hillman was interviewed not long before his death on a talk show along with the book's author. When asked about facing some of the greatest MLB hitters of all time, Dave was quick to mention that he had Willie Mays' number, and every time he faced Willie, the old guy now puts one hand under his chin, flutters his fingers, and the old hillbilly says with a smile, "I played Willie some chin music. The first pitch to Willie was always right under his chin. I wanted him to know I was here." During his time in the bigs, Dave owned the Say Hey Kid. But Hank Aaron owned Dave, with Dave saying, "He always knew what I was going to pitch." Pretty cool how Dave Hillman is one of those ball players who was in the majors and had a few stories to tell about his times pitching to some of the all-time great Hall of Famers. Stories good and bad for him. And even if he's no longer around to tell them, his son is. And what's also nice is that I get to end this show talking about one more of Dave's stories about when he was teammates with one of the all-time legends. Well, the story is more about the legend than it is Dave, yet a once-in-a-lifetime story for both players. So Boston's pitcher Dave Hillman was in the Red Sox bullpen at Fenway Park on September 28th, 1960. And if you're a Red Sox diehard, you know what that date means. Overall, a somewhat sad day for baseball, but all good things must come to an end. This is the day Ted Williams hit his historic home run. Which one, Hillbilly? In his last at-bat in the final game of his career, and he hit it at Fenway. What are the odds of that happening? If you're Teddy Ball game, the odds are good. Real good. Because that's what he did. Just like what the California boys said he was going to do. There's footage of the Red Sox pitchers scrambling in the bullpen when they saw the ball coming their way. But when that historic home run ball fell out of the sky and came down in the Red Sox bullpen, the man of the moment, Dave Hillman, was the one who got it. What are the odds that Dave would be the one to end up with that ball? I'd say the odds are better of Ted Williams hitting a home run in his very last at-bat, which he did. Speaking of Ted Williams, one of Dad's junior high friends' attempt at a joke that my dad did not find funny.